Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. It's Tuesday, April 9th. We are flying through.
Yeah, this is going by real fast.
The NFL offseason. Trying to enjoy some playoff basketball and hockey this week, I would think.
Yeah, extra lit about hockey for me.
Yeah.
And you're extra lit about basketball.
Yeah,
But we're both extra lit about the NFL draft coming up soon.
Yeah. So it's 2 weeks away. I don't even know anymore. 2 weeks away.
I think it's the end of April.
My watch isn't even working to tell me when that is. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon right across from me.
What's up?
And welcome to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. We got our last episode of All the Glitters coming at you.
Pretty sad.
Today,
End of an era.
tonight, whenever you're listening. End of an era. It only took us 6 weeks. We're going to break down the top 5 to 10 finishers from the tight end position and discuss if they were truly good or what a flash in the pan. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at the FF Champs, Instagram at the Fantasy Champions, and go to facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions to like us on Facebook. Facebook, the community is very small. You should probably go like us on Facebook if you even use Facebook anymore.
Yeah. Which I don't know if you do because it's Facebook. But
subscribe wherever you listen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. And we're also on YouTube. Leave a review and share this podcast with your friends.
we also just low-key dissed everybody who uses Facebook. So
Yeah, that's true. Anyone who's using Facebook right now on a regular basis probably doesn't listen to our podcast.
Well, you use Facebook on a regular basis, don't you?
I actually don't.
Okay.
I actually don't. Don't judge me. Twitter's my mainstay.
Yeah.
That's where I go.
That's fair.
That's where I go for all my information. There is no news this week. Absolutely no news besides
Some drama.
some drama between Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. So we're going to start off with a little question that I formulated before the show. So to get you caught up in case you don't know and you're not using Twitter,
And you're on Facebook.
Antonio Brown tweeted some pretty nasty stuff. Go look it up. I'm not going to repeat it. About Juju, and then Juju responded, and so they've been going back and forth. So this begs the question, who's going to finish with more fantasy points next season?
This one hurts for me to answer because it's hard. I actually think they're both going to be around the same. But if I have to pick one, I think I'm just going to go Juju. I think.
Oh, boy.
Do you have a different answer than me?
I don't know yet.
Okay, so you're still thinking about it too. I think it can go either way though, because I think they're both kind of in the same area of guys like low end art. Yeah, I'm looking at the mock draft right now. For half PPR, 10 teams, current mock draft.
Yeah.
It's very early, but still. Juju's going 16th overall. Antonio Brown's going 17th overall.
Gross.
They're literally neck and neck. I'm going Juju as of today. It might change my answer once I see Antonio Brown working with the Raiders. I think that could be a big thing.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I just think the opportunity that Juju's going to get next year is going to be through the roof. And the Steelers throw the ball a lot. Like a lot.
Yeah.
So, but again, you can't go wrong with either guy, I don't think.
So there are some in the fantasy community that would believe that Juju is going to be the top receiver in fantasy football next year.
Like the top?
The top.
He's got that kind of upside.
I don't believe that.
I don't think it's going to happen, but he does have that upside.
So the Steelers have a lot of... I should probably answer the question, but the Steelers have a lot of turnaround when it comes to players. They didn't have Le'Veon Bell all of last season, but the Le'Veon Bell situation is over, so he's gone. James Conner was pretty good. Juju's by himself now, and I'm not one to... I love Juju. Like, I love Juju Smith-Schuster. I want him to be...
Yeah, he was your guy when he came into the league last year, right? And
Yeah, definitely. And I want him to succeed, obviously, but he's by himself. He doesn't have Antonio Brown. Now, yes, you can cite numbers when AB wasn't in the game. You can do all of that stuff, right? But AB is literally not on the Steelers anymore. People are going to game plan starting week 1 of the preseason as if Juju Smith-Schuster is the number 1 wide receiver on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That is my concern for him.
And if Juju responds well, like he did in those games AB wasn't in them, and he plays strong, then you're going to get good Juju. But if that's not what happens, then he's going to end up being he's going to get he's going to crush teams because you're going to draft him far too early, and you're going to get a guy who doesn't produce. Now, because everyone cites the Steelers throw a lot. Well, are the Steelers going to continue throwing as much as they normally do with a 38-year-old Ben Roethlisberger who's probably on his last season?
Very valid question. I don't know.
This leads me to my point. Now, Antonio Brown is going to get a lot less targets. So this discussion is not necessarily about Antonio Brown being the same player that he was. But I do believe Antonio Brown, and this is so hard for me to say. I can't even. I could be very, very wrong about this, and I will come on this podcast and I will admit it to all of you if I'm wrong. You can mock me on Twitter about it. But I personally believe AB will probably get more fantasy points than Juju. I don't know how many that's going to be.
That's not that's not a Skip Bayless hot take. Or Max Kellerman hot take.
Some people would feel like it is.
I don't think so. I mean, I think they're both very close. I just picked Juju because I think the upside is higher, and I think there's a chance that Antonio Brown really just fails in Oakland, and that whole situation is just awful.
Yeah,
I think there's a very good possibility of that happening.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think you're like crazy or anything for saying that.
Some people would think I'm crazy. People really like Juju right now. This is one of those interesting times of year where coaches, everyone is good. This is what I'm realizing. Like, everyone is good. Like, you look at everyone and they're like, oh, good situation here, good situation there. The coaches are like, oh, everyone showed up. This guy looks good. We're going to use him this year.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Howard gets traded after they said they were going to use him. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a weird time of year. But you start scouting players, and because there's such a long stretch of time between, Super Bowl and preseason or even training camp, you're not seeing football. So it's like you're kind of just using your memory and the news that you're getting about certain guys.
Yeah.
Like, people are just assuming Derrick Henry is going to return to that 5-game beast mode that he was at the end of the season last year, and they're listening to the new offensive coordinator of the Titans say that they're going to feed them the ball and build the organization around Derrick Henry. Let's take a step back and see the other 11 games that he played and see that he blowed. He sucked in those games. I don't care if they were using him right or wrong.
I get what you mean.
That is Derrick Henry. So it's like, we need to remember the entire picture. Juju's a fantastic wide receiver. AB's a fantastic wide receiver. AB is going to make the Steelers better. You can't just say...
Wait, the Raiders, you mean?
I'm sorry. He's going to make the Raiders better. You can't just say Antonio Brown is just going to bust. He's going to go from being the number 2 wide receiver to the number 30 wide receiver.
I think
that's not going to happen.
There actually is a possibility of that. Just because...
I don't think there's a possibility of that extreme. I think he could finish as the wide receiver 18 or 19.
Okay, that's more realistic.
Which would be a bust, but I don't... Like, if he finished as the wide receiver 30, I would be stunned. I think he's going to finish in the top 10.
I do too, but I think the bust potential is there with Antonio Brown just because it's the Raiders, dude, and the locker room situation.
Who's going to steal? The Steelers
Nobody.
were a disaster. Who's going to steal targets from him? No one.
Oh, wow. Who's the guy they just brought in from the Chargers? He might, but for the most part,
Tyrell Williams.
You know who might steal targets is John Gruden from not throwing the football. Or drafting like
I think people are going to be surprised with how the Steelers. I keep saying the Steelers, how the Raiders are going to use Antonio Brown. I think people are going to be surprised. It is a different situation, and he's not going to get as many targets. So I don't expect him to produce at that. What is it? The wide receiver 1.
Yeah, like the best wide receiver.
The best wide receiver in football, or even a top 5 wide receiver. But I still think he's talented enough to finish in the top 10. Like, if you think that he's not going to finish in the top. Now, Juju, where did he finish? 8?
Yeah. I think
Somewhere
it was
around
8,
there.
yeah.
They're going to be close. But I don't know if Juju's going to take this quantitative leap forward that puts him in the AB area. I mean, hey, I hope he does. He's a great value. Him and AB are both great values in the second, third round. Because if they turn into something that good, it's going to be fantastic for your fantasy team. But for me, I can't look at I don't know. I look at AB and Juju, and like Juju has, all of the questions surrounding him. AB has all of the questions surrounding him, and it's like, which guy actually is going to be better? Because you can cite the numbers of saying, Big Ben throws a lot. Well, is he going to throw a lot this year? Or is the culture shifting in the Pittsburgh Steelers organization from having, the killer bees is what they call them, the big three, Big Ben, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell. You got those 3 guys running the group. Now, 2 of them are gone. And then you have an old man at quarterback with 2 young kids. Are they going to play as good without, the talent behind them? I just don't know if that's going to happen.
Yep. I mean, it's a fair question.
It's hard.
It is going to be close. It is very hard.
It's going to be very close.
I do think there is a slight chance, though, of the Raiders just imploding. Like everyone, not just Antonio Brown.
Raiders imploding. I think people judge the Raiders far too much.
There's also with that being said, I actually do like the Raiders this year.
I do like the Raiders.
I think their problem, though, will be they have the Chiefs and Chargers in their division. So I don't know if their win total is going to be that high, but...
Well, I mean, they could beat everyone else and lose 4 games.
Yeah.
That's real.
Do you think they'll finish higher than the Broncos? Just quickly.
Yeah. Not even a question.
Okay, wow.
Sorry, Broncos blow.
Even with that defense?
Joe Flacco's going to lead them to the Super
defense?
Bowl. Yes. Well, the defense is getting older. They've run out of time.
That's true. Bradley Chubb isn't.
Not older, just...
Well, he is getting older, actually.
Well, he got older, yes, but like...
In a good way.
How good is Bradley Chubb, really?
Oh, he's good.
All right. We got to move on. This is not a real football podcast. We talk fantasy on the show, people.
Are you saying fantasy isn't real?
Fantasy is fantasy football.
Fantasy isn't real.
Let's go. All that glitters.
So let's move into our main segment where we discuss the top finishing tight ends from 2019. Just preface this, that all statistics are half PPR. We discuss the realities of tight ends in 2018, and our goal is to help you look at last year's numbers, dissect them, and then tell you if the production will continue and if you should draft them in 2019. So let's get into it. Tight ends are the bane of my existence.
Yep.
If I could just
hate them all.
Put tight ends in a box somewhere,
now that Gronk's gone.
I honestly considered switching our league from tight ends to tight end / wide receiver. So if you feel like taking Travis Kelce and sticking him in that spot, feel free. It would be filled with a wide receiver 9 times out of 10.
Probably.
Tight ends are so hard to predict. Now they fall in the conversation of the stream. It's a streamable category, right? If you're quarterbacks, you can stream quarterbacks. You can stream defenses. You can stream kickers. Can't stream wide receivers and running backs. Don't try to do that. You'll fail miserably. And you can stream tight ends.
Imagine someone trying to stream a running back.
Yeah, no, that would
for a full season.
You're that desperate. Just make a trade, boss.
That's
you don't need DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams on your team. Make a trade.
That's everybody last year who drafted Le'Veon Bell in the first round and then Devontae Freeman in the second round.
Yeah, that's true. But I look at tight ends and they kind of they're extremely hard to figure out. And unless you have one of the top 3 tight ends, you're going to get screwed.
You're going to get porked.
Yeah. And in the end of the year, you're going to be like, oh. And the reality is, I noticed this in the leagues that I played. I played in 6 leagues. I won 5 of them.
Which one did you not win? I just want to clear that.
Not the one I run.
Oh, okay. The one that I'm in?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm never gonna let that go.
Yeah, never. At least,
and that's okay because
at least I didn't lose to you in the championship.
When you do win, eventually, you get to do the same thing. So
I try.
Look forward to it.
But anyway, so 5 out of 6 leagues I won. In those leagues, people who drafted tight ends higher succeeded less.
Yeah.
And so if you were drafting Gronk or Kelce or Ertz in the first 5 rounds...
Gronk's a perfect example of
Gronk
that
is a perfect example. If you drafted Gronk high... he's not even on our list today because he finished 11. He did miss 3 games, so he probably would have finished in the top 10 if he had played those 3 games. But regardless, if you drafted Gronk that early, I think it was, late second round, early third.
I mean, that is early, but I don't blame you for wanting to get Gronk, you know?
Oh, yeah. But I think when you go out and you try to snag, people are going to draft Gronk in like the 6th or 7th round this year, even though he's retired, in hopes that he comes in and plays.
You think so?
Yeah, I do think so. People are stupid that. Don't draft Gronk, people. It's not worth it. Anyway, people who draft Gronk stash him, and then he comes back week 8, and then he dominates the rest
better
of the
stash
year.
than Kareem Hunt, confirmed.
Yeah, don't draft Rob Gronkowski. But if you draft a tight end early, the one thing that I like to look at is that you got to compare the value of each position. So what I like to do is say, okay, this is where the tight end is going, right? Yeah. Travis Kelce. This is where he's projected to be in, a 12 team draft, right? He's projected to go pick in the second round, pick 2, 2.02. That's where he's projected to go right now, according to what is it called? The fantasy football calculator.
Yep.
So that's where he's projected to go. So you take Travis Kelce, you look at him, and then you look at the wide receivers around him, right? And you say, okay, where is that wide receiver going? So if, say you have Stefan Diggs sitting right around that spot, that same area where Travis Kelce is getting drafted. Look at the fantasy points of the number 11 wide receiver from last year, and then look at the fantasy points for the number 1 tight end, and figure out. Or no, Kelce's not going off the board. It's guys like
Zach Ertz.
AB. No, I'm talking about wide receivers.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
guys
in the second round, yeah. AB and Juju, the guys we were just talking about.
Yeah, guys we were just talking about. And it's like, so you're asking me, what guy do you want? AB or Juju or Travis Kelce in that spot? You have to match the production.
Yeah.
To me, Travis Kelce has a second-round pick, and Zach Ertz, who we will talk about in a second, both are not second-round picks.
Yeah.
Like, to
me,
if
really good players.
Yeah.
And considering every other tight end, they are clearly the 2 best.
Oh, yeah, clearly.
However, as you're saying,
value.
If you're taking Travis Kelce in the second round and you're passing up on a Juju, on an Antonio Brown, you could be missing out on a lot of fantasy points. Because those guys, like let's say Juju hits that peak that we were talking about, he's going to be getting like 60 fantasy points more than Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Which is something, and Travis Kelce is going to be good next year.
Right.
So maybe that's the thought process, but you're still going to be missing out on a lot of points if you take Kelce or Ertz early.
100%. And I think that those are the things, though, that you kind of have to look out for is, should you be drafting that tight end in that spot? This is all pre-draft. Like sitting down pre-draft and going, okay, this is the projection of where a guy like this would go. Mm-hmm. The wide receiver 5 is coming off the board early or midway through the second round in my 10-team league, right? He's coming off the board. The wide receiver 5 is coming off the board, and then you're looking at a tight end coming off the board like Travis Kelce. Is the wide receiver 5 of last year, those numbers matching up with what Travis Kelce produced? And it's not. I guarantee you it's not. Yeah. So the value doesn't switch until like the 5th or 6th round. And you shouldn't even be drafting a tight end at that point because you're talking about being down the board at 5, right? I mean, you're talking about the 5th or 6th tight end off the board this year and is going to be Ebron or Cook. And it's like... Or not Cook, but Ebron and
Evan Ingram
or
right now.
O.J. Howard or Evan Ingram.
O.J. Howard, yeah.
And it's like those guys coming off the board super late. It's not going to help your team in the long run to draft a tight end super early. So we are going to go over the tight ends, but the top ones, we're probably going to advise you not to take them, just as a preface. But one thing that you want to do is that fantasy football, and we'll talk about this probably in the future as we go through draft strategies and stuff, throughout the off season, is using the draft as a part of winning your championship, not as the whole
correct
reality. Because people like to draft and then sit there and hope that that team that they drafted works out. Every single team that like unless I do one of those NFL or ESPN managed leagues where I just join a bunch of random people who don't care.
You do a live draft lobby.
Yeah. And you get on that team and like I literally won I think I did a league on ESPN this year that was separate from the other 6 leagues that I did. And I just drafted
to draft
and left it alone, and then I went back like midway through the season and I was freaking undefeated and all this stuff. And my strategy worked, but if you're in a league where people pay attention, it's going to be extremely hard to win games just based on the draft. So you need to take an account when you're drafting, not just saying, "Oh, this is the team I'm going to roll with the whole year." If you get to the late ends of the draft and you're like, "I don't have a tight end," try to trade for one later. It's easy as that. Like, some idiot who porked himself drafting Travis Kelce in the second round is going to regret it. And if you have some valuable pieces that he needs, go after it. He or she needs. Go after Travis Kelce. Go after Zach Ertz. Go after George Kittle. That's still on the table. Going in and drafting a tight end. Because at some point, before the season, first couple weeks of the season, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, I'm glad I drafted the tight end. This is great. He's getting me a lot of fantasy points." And then midway through the season, when they're like 0-3, and they're
I
like,
don't have a wide receiver.
Why didn't I draft a wide receiver?
Wait a minute. My RB2 is Dion Lewis.
What the freak just happened? Why am I losing? I can't figure it out because you didn't draft the wide receiver early.
Now, granted, I do want to take this with a grain of salt.
Yep.
Because I do love Travis Kelce.
Oh, yeah.
And I love him
I
on
do
my
too.
fantasy.
We both had Gronk and Travis Kelce on our fantasy team at one point.
Drafting him in the second round is just too early. Drafting any tight end.
It's far too early.
Unless the tight end is literally historically good and like
and
as good, putting up the same numbers as Julio Jones and guys like that, it's not worth it.
Yeah, it really isn't. I try to avoid, like I said, there's certain positions that I try to avoid early because you tight end is a hard position because you can't really get quarterbacks. You can get late. Quarterbacks you can get a good quarterback late.
Oh yeah, you could get
tight ends. You can't.
Correct.
So it's either get the top 3 or stream, and getting the top 3 early. This is the way I look at it: is the tight end position based on value? You have running back as 1, wide receiver as 2, quarterback as 3, tight end is 4, and then I don't care which one you want to put 5 and 6 kicker or defense. That's how I rank the positions. Saying, okay, if tight end is the least valuable of the main positions, it's not going to hurt you to have a bad tight end because everyone else is going to have a bad tight end.
And the ones who do have a good tight end, it's the difference of about 6 to 7 fantasy points.
Yeah, and it's like when you play them, is Travis Kelce going to beat you in a fantasy game? And I'm sure that's happened.
In a week-to-week basis, he might. But
he
overall,
might
throughout the entire season, he won't.
He won't. So when you look at it, you have to continue to, when you're drafting, I look, like I said, the first 5 rounds are that structure. They're the structure of your team. They're the core of your team. They're the guys that you may look down the road and say, you know what, I need to get more talent on my team because one of my players I drafted in the first 5 rounds got hurt, so I got to trade this guy away. It's like that's the core and the structure and the foundation of your team. And if you're drafting tight ends to be the foundation, it's like building a house on sand, like that blows with the breeze. And I told you this before the show. Last year or the last 2 years of tight end production, not including 2018, the highest finishing guy in half PPR was right around between 190 and 200 fantasy points. The top 3 guys in fantasy this year had 243, 222, and 214. So they all scored higher than the top finishing player over the last 2 or 3 years. So the tight end position is getting thrown to a lot more, and I think we're going to see it expand a little bit. Yeah. But you go through these periods of fluctuation where you get, a good tight end, and then you get like Gronk, his 17 touchdown year. Jimmy Graham, his 15, 16 touchdown year. Like you get
Kelce
those guys.
Last year.
Yeah, like Kelce last year. You get that every once in a while, but it comes once in a blue moon, and Kelce is probably, I would not be surprised if he did this again. Not 243, but let's talk about Travis Kelce because we're here to talk about tight ends.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
So Travis Kelce finished with 243 fantasy points, the number one tight end. He was the number one tight end.
Fantastic season.
It wasn't even close. His consistency rank, he finished as the number one. He busted 6.2% of the time.
So that's one game, right?
The one bust game was against the Chargers, game 1 of the season where he had 1 fantasy point. And then, he averaged, I think everything about the Chiefs was interesting last year because I remember when we talked about Tyreek Hill and we talked about Patrick Mahomes in this series, we looked at it and we were like, the home road splits for the Kansas City Chiefs were, he got a lot less fantasy points at home than he did on the road. He had 12 at home and 17 on the road. So Travis Kelce, fantastic player, not going to draft him. Not going to draft him pick 202. I'm not doing that. Sorry. It's a waste of a draft selection.
Well, you're not taking him 14th overall?
Yeah, no, I'm not taking him 14th overall.
Because he's going to go that high in some leagues. However, don't come to us and be like, you guys told us not to draft a tight end. So Travis Kelce was there in the 4th round or was there in the 5th round in my league, and I didn't draft, and I drafted T.Y. Hilton instead.
If Travis Kelce falls to the 5th round, take him.
Yeah. We're just saying don't take him in the 2nd round.
That's why, like I said, the value factor, though, is like...
Right.
Like, if you have a wide... By the time you get to the 5th round, you're probably on wide receiver 15 to 20. Yeah. And at that point, Travis Kelce is outscoring those guys.
Correct.
So take him in that round. You have to look at the value. Always be wise with the value. He did only bust 6.25% of the time. I saw that, and I was like... I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this guy
Last year, he
insane. He was really
fantastic.
Good. He was really good. Overall, I just don't... I don't know if he can continue this type of production. He had a really good season. And usually tight ends coming off a really good season don't... Not that they don't continue.
Historically, they usually don't put up the same
Historically, they don't put up the same numbers. Travis Kelce, I think 3 years in a row, has finished as the number one tight end in fantasy football.
Has he really?
Something like that, yeah. I can check
actually,
right
that would make
now.
sense, yeah. I was going to say Gronk one of those years, but Gronk's always injured, so
yeah,
it would make sense.
I was looking at the wrong numbers. I was like, why does that not make sense?
I mean...
Yeah, Gronk finished as the number one last year by 0.8 fantasy points. Travis Kelce was 2. And then
what year is this?
That was 2017. 2016, Kelce finished with 180. And then going back to 2015, Travis Kelce was 7 with 153. And Gronk was 219.
So he's been in the top 2 the last 3 years.
The last 3 years. So, I mean, for Travis Kelce, I can't see him, especially when you see this year, right? Either this is a trend of teams in the NFL throwing to their tight ends more, and it's about to blow up where you're going to see guys like, I don't want to say Eric Ebron, but you're going to see guys
Trey
like,
Burton,
maybe
David Njoku,
Trey Burton, David Njoku,
Vance
some
McDonald,
more guys. But then again, there's guys coming from the college ranks who don't throw to tight ends at all. So are we going to see a trend in the other direction? Because the old school coaches like Bill Belichick and coach of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Eric. Wow.
Eric. You called him Eric, bro.
Andy Reid.
I
was trying to say Eric Reid for some reason.
Eric Reid. So anyway, Andy Reid, those guys are 2 old school coaches, and they throw tight ends. That's what they do. So to me, I just don't know if we're going to continue to see that same production from tight ends, but as far as Travis Kelce is concerned, 243 fantasy points is pretty good.
I don't think he'll do that again, but
he might eclipse 200. But if you go back to 2017, and that's what the production is on a year-to-year basis.
Here is a key difference, though. He didn't have Mahomes.
Yeah, that's true.
He had Alex Smith as his quarterback.
But he still finished as a top receiver.
Oh yeah, no, I think he.
They're going to be forcing the ball.
I don't know about 240, but I think he will definitely get over 200.
Over 200, yeah. You definitely have to kind of factor that in when you're drafting. I always look at tight ends as like basically your third wide receiver almost.
Yeah, that is a good way of putting it.
So that's the way I kind of look at him. And if you can get him as your third wide receiver, I mean, he's good. But like I said, I'm not drafting him that early. I'm taking Travis Kelce off my board completely, and I'm looking to target him in trades and in situations like that, because you can get burnt on drafting tight ends way too early. So I really like Travis Kelce, but drafting him that early is just way too much. Number 2 on our list, Zach Ertz. This guy has been good for a few years now. He is basically
he's Carson Wentz's boy.
Carson Wentz's boy. Every time Carson Wentz steps on that field, the guy gets like 20 points a game.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But Zach Ertz, he had 222 fantasy points. He averaged about 14 points per game, and his consistency rank was 3. He did bust 25% of the time, but that's because the 25% of the time Nick Foles was playing.
Right, yep.
This was an interesting statistic that I pulled from this. If you have Zach Ertz on your team, I wish Zach Ertz was more of a streamable asset, but he's not. He had 18 fantasy points on average at home and 8 on the road.
That is interesting.
A 10-point difference. He looked like an average tight end in the NFL on the road. And at home, he looked like
best tight end in the league.
Best tight end in the league. So that's an interesting split right there. And if you have Zach Ertz on your team, you might want to take that into consideration. Streaming tight ends is the most difficult thing on the planet. But Zach Ertz, I mean, I wish he was more of a sure thing. It's just a matter of if Carson Wentz can stay on the field. That's the big thing.
Yeah, that is key. But I think he will. I think this year might. I got a good feeling about the Eagles this year.
2 of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL. Don't ask me why. Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo and Carson Wentz.
Jimmy Garoppolo makes
they can't
a little
stay
more
on
sense,
the field.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's ridiculous.
I do like Zach Ertz, but he's same situation as Travis Kelce. Right now he's going in the 3rd round.
3rd or 4th round?
But early 3rd round.
Good God.
You know who else is in the early 3rd round that you could get?
Yep.
Leonard Fournette.
Right.
Antonio Brown might still be there.
Yeah.
Like, there are guys in that spot.
There's also, like, Stefan Diggs and
yeah,
some guys like that. You just don't want to waste your time on...
Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
Mike Evans. And I don't even love those guys, but I would take those guys over Zach Ertz. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a waste of time to draft a tight end early. That's what's unfortunate is that there are the crazy people who take tight ends way too freaking early and suffocate the rest of us from the tight end position. It's unreal. Because I really do like Zach Ertz. I've liked Zach Ertz for a very long, like, the last 3 years or so.
Yeah.
So...
Last few, well, because he's an Eagles player, and you got your thing for Carson Wentz. So
I do.
As long as Carson Wentz has been in the league,
it's true. Deshaun Jackson, go and get him. No,
yeah,
I'm kidding.
Deshaun Jackson. Yeah, I think. But again, I do like Zach Ertz too, and this is coming from someone who's not an Eagles fan, an Eagles lover like yourself. But
I'm not an Eagles fan.
It's too early for tight end still. It's still too early.
Yeah, way too early. He still is fantastic. Is he a guy that you want to post-draft target on your team, or does the lack of consistency on a home and road basis, does that concern you at all?
Not really, because if I'm targeting one of the top tight ends, I'm taking any one of them. Like, if that makes sense to you, like, let's say theoretically the best team in the league has Travis Kelce, so you're not going to get Travis Kelce. Let's say the second best team has George Kittle. You're not getting George Kittle.
Right.
Let's say a really crappy team that needs a really good receiver and a really good running back has Zach Ertz.
Right.
That doesn't, I'm still going after Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
The home and road doesn't bother me, though.
Okay. Because I looked at some of his fantasy numbers. It was like a completely different tight end. And that's what...
I wonder what the percentage is of Nick Foles' road games versus Carson Wentz. I would just be interested.
Fantastic stat. So on the road, he had the first couple games of the year when Carson Wentz was playing, he had 14, 16, 13, and 10 in his first 4 road games. So those aren't bad numbers. After that, week 10 on, and the 4 road games they played, 2, 6, 3, and 3.
And I'm pretty sure Foles is quarterback for at least half of those.
Yeah, somewhere around that. But even with Foles on the field, he was still a beast at home. I mean, his stat lines at home, 7-9 to start the season, then 22, 18, 33, 18, 12, and then 29. I mean, it was
33.
Yeah, it was freaking insane.
That's when a tight end's worth it.
Yeah. If he could do that the whole season, that's when it would be good. But that's the only question for me. Is Zach Ertz going to be that? Because these two guys at the top.
Do you like Zach Ertz more than Travis Kelce?
I don't want to answer that question. No, not at all.
You were tempted.
I was tempted, though. You caught me off guard. Don't catch me off guard when it comes to Carson Wentz's boys, all right?
I'm sorry.
No, but when you look at the top two tight ends, though, that finished last year, I would not be surprised if Kelce finished second and Zach Ertz finished 1. I would not be surprised. If Kelce finished 1 and Zach Ertz finished 2, I would not be surprised. Is there another tight end that is going to supersede these two men?
No. And
that's I don't think we've seen in a long time two tight ends end in the same spot they did the previous year. But sure, if you drafted one of these guys and you really love tight ends, you're getting a sure thing. I mean, there's not much more of a sure thing
than is true.
Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz. But it's really, really hard for me to draft a tight end.
The ceiling, so you will get a good tight end if you draft one of those guys.
Yeah.
But the ceiling for them is not going to be that high.
No, it's not.
Considering what else you could get. Like, their ceiling is nowhere near the total fantasy point of a Leonard Fournette.
No, it's not. Nowhere near it. I think it also depends where you're at as a team, drafting. But at that point, for me, it's so early that
So let's say,
I know you don't have guys.
Let's say fourth round, Zach Ertz is there. You have 2 running backs that you really like, and you drafted your guy Antonio Brown.
Okay.
And Zach Ertz is there in round 4. Do you take him?
It depends.
Okay.
If there's wide receivers there,
depends who else is on the board.
I already did this. Stefan Diggs is a 4th round pick right now. Stefan Diggs last year finishes the wide receiver 11, and I believe he had over 220 fantasy points, something like that. No, that's not right.
I'm looking this up.
I miscalculated my math there. He's not a 4th round pick. If he's a 4th rounder, yeah, I'm taking him.
You are.
Yeah, probably, because I look at him as a third wide receiver, like I said. So he would be on my team as a 3rd wide receiver. But I still don't want to take tight ends that early. Like that hurts my soul, because there's
you're just taking him because of the value, right?
I'd take him just because of the value. But if you have 2 running backs, like if I get to the 4th round and Leonard Fournette's coming off the board in the 4th round and Zach Ertz is sitting there, I'm taking Leonard Fournette. And I need a running back, I'll take Leonard Fournette. But if you're talking about Zach Ertz in the 4th round and you have 2 running backs and you have 1 wide receiver already, it might be worth taking Zach Ertz that early, because you can fill the wide receiver position later on in your draft, right?
Correct.
So I think that's where I was looking at it, and I think the 4th or 5th round was where the value switched for the top tight ends. So I would draft Kelce in the 4th round, I'd draft Ertz in the 4th round, and I'd probably draft Kittle in the 4th round if they fell there. But if you get outside of that, I'm not wasting a pick on a tight end. You know what I mean? If those guys don't fall to the 4th round, it's not going to happen.
Okay.
Let's move on to George Kittle.
Now we're finally getting to my guy.
Yeah. 214 fantasy points. He finished with a consistency rank of 2. So he was more consistent than Zach Ertz. He put up a lot of great numbers. And the interesting thing about him is that he did it with 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't have 1 quarterback the whole year. He did it with 3 quarterbacks. I still haven't decided how I feel about George Kittle, and I don't know why. I just have this strange
because he hasn't really done it other than
this year, yeah. But he also doesn't have that consistent quarterback. And the question is, I mean, the big thing is that Jimmy Garoppolo came from a system where throwing to the tight end was
they used it a lot.
Very, very important. And so my one thing is that when you look at what's his name? Kyle Shanahan's system, right? In his systems, he doesn't really throw to the tight end all too much. Do you think they threw the George Kittle because of a lack of receiving options on the outside? Or do you think George Kittle was actually just getting open that often?
I think it's a little bit of both, but did the 49ers really add many outside receivers?
They did not.
So I think it's going to be a little bit of both again.
Do you think Jimmy G is an important factor in whether he performs well?
I actually would say no, because he did a lot of that with Nick Mullins as his quarterback. However, I think if Jimmy G plays the whole season, I think that'll definitely help. Because here's my thing. I'm in love with the 49ers.
Oh,
know, we're both Jimmy Garoppolo guys.
Love Jimmy G.
So I think it's probably just the fan in me, but I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have a big year this year. I think that will translate for George Kittle.
Okay. All right. That's what I was going to ask is it going to translate to George Kittle?
Yeah.
I think so. I like Dante Pettis, and Marquise Goodwin is okay. I don't know. I just every once in a while you get this tight end that comes out of nowhere, and then he vanishes.
That is true.
And it's like I feel like George Kittle finishing 3, he could end up being the second best tight end next year, maybe even the number 1 tight end next year, or he can end up being the tight end 40.
Yeah, which is I think why
I don't think George Kittle is going to be the tight end 40.
Even if people think
don't tell me to take a flying leap.
You said I didn't draft George Kittle because you said he'd be tight end 40. No, but I think that's probably the reason he's going as the third tight end instead of, because a lot of people do actually like him more than like Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but a decent amount. But even those people have Kittle 3 because Ertz and Kelce are more of a sure thing than Kittle is.
Right. I mean, looking at where Mr. Kittle is going, he's going right now in 12
right behind Ertz, right?
12-team leagues. He's going right behind Ertz, but early 4th round. If you look at his overall, he's right around pick 401.
Okay.
So early 4th round. I think that's too early for me, but if I'm in the 4th round and I've got a solid foundation right there, and I look at like the 5th round and I'm like, okay, I could probably 5th and 6th round I could probably snag a wide receiver and a running back and get my flex and my second wide receiver and 2 decent guys, and you're kind of forward looking.
You think you can get like a Mark Ingram type?
Yeah, you could
5th round,
you could
and then
probably pick up George Kittle, but I don't know, because like I said, the 4th and 5th round are right around where the top 3 tight ends, and where the wide receiver position, it kind of flips. So if you still have Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, and George Kittle on the board in the 4th or 5th round, those are guys that you probably want to take over the wide receivers on the board at that moment because they scored more fantasy points than them last year, and they're better overall receivers than the guys sitting there.
Yeah.
So you might have a better value. But if you're sitting there and you have 1 wide receiver, 1 running back, or 2 wide receivers and 1 running back, then you're going to have to draft a running back that round. So to me, I don't see a scenario where you are like, okay, you definitely got to draft Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, or George Kittle in this spot. But it's just tough. You really can't. Unfortunately, you can't draft the top 3 tight end. You're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. You're like, you want Kelce, you want Ertz, you want Kittle, but if you draft them, you're looking past some pretty good players.
If you draft them, you better
have
being
a plan.
A league with crappy players and have a plan.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a really competitive league and everybody knows what they're doing, and you take Travis Kelce 14th overall, that's probably going to come back to bite you.
Now let me ask you a few questions. I'm just going to throw 3 or 4 receivers right around George Kittle.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to just quickly pick one.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen or George Kittle?
Keenan Allen.
Amari Cooper or George Kittle?
Oh, that one is tough. I'll go Cooper. It's tough, though.
Stefon Diggs or George Kittle?
Diggs.
Brandon Cooks or George Kittle?
I'm actually going Kittle on that one.
And you'd probably take every single one of you back except for Damian Williams around him.
Yeah.
So I mean, as far as George Kittle is concerned, I don't even see him. If you keep going down that list on the ADP, I think you would definitely take him over Robert Woods and Kenny Galladay, right?
Oh yeah.
And then, but just at that point, like I said, and those guys are still good players that could be wide receiver 2s on your team. So, like I said, 4th or 5th round is really a generically a good place to.
Chances are George Kittle will be gone by the middle of the 4th round.
Yeah, middle of the 4th round, George Kittle's
latest.
Yep, big time.
I think he's going in the 3rd round in most leagues.
But the top 3 tight ends, extremely talented. George Kittle, I think with consistent quarterback play, could probably have a better season than he did this year.
Yeah.
It just depends on what the trends are for 2019.
And if you are worried about Garoppolo's injury history and how will that affect Kittle, I still wouldn't be too concerned with that just because of what he was able to do last year with Nick Mullins.
Yeah. Let's move on to Eric Ebron. We're probably only going to be able to get through 5 tight ends in this segment. I don't want to torture you all through the bottom 5, but we will quickly mention some of them.
Okay.
Eric Ebron finished with 189.2 fantasy points.
That's really good.
Consistency rank of 5. So he busted 31.25% of the time. I forgot to tell everyone a bust is this is absolutely crazy. A bust for a tight end is under 7 fantasy points. Which is very low, and a tight end 1 finish. So this means you finished in the top 10 of tight ends or the top 12 of tight ends is above 9 points. 9 points and above. Okay, which is very low.
That's
still
not bad, though.
Considering other positions.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Anyway. So when you look at Eric Ebron, he had a decent season. He had a couple of really big games, and then he had a couple of really bad games. He was pretty even home road split, but here's the thing. The reason why Eric Ebron was good, and there is a big fat freaking buyer beware symbol right next to him on my draft board. And this is because Eric Ebron is not the number 1. I'm sorry. I hate to hurt people's feelings. And I hate hurt people's soul. Eric Ebron is not the number 1 tight end in Indianapolis. Nothing has changed. Everyone got sweaty when he caught 3 touchdown passes in one game on 3 targets. You know who had more targets in that game?
Who?
Jack Doyle. Eric Ebron is not the number 1 tight end. Jack Doyle is. Now, I'm not saying Jack Doyle is going to end up as a top 5 tight end next year. But if you're telling me that Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle are going to go into the season, and if Jack Doyle plays the entire season completely injury-free, which is, we'll see. If he can play the entire season injury-free, he is going to steal targets away from Ebron. People are going to draft Ebron far too early because of his finish this year. They're going to take him, and they're going to go, oh, my God, why did I take Ebron in the 6th, 5th, and 6th round when I could have gotten this guy? I shouldn't have drafted Ebron. Don't waste your time on Eric Ebron. I'm sorry. Don't even target him. Don't even go near him. Put a 6-mile radius around you and Eric Ebron.
I don't know how I can top that. There's really not too much more to say.
I can't stand Eric Ebron.
What I will say is, even for someone like me who I don't hate Ebron like you do, I'm still staying away from him because A, he's going too early, like you said. B, even if you think Ebron will get more targets than Jack Doyle over the course of the season, if Jack Doyle is healthy, that still doesn't mean he won't take away targets from Ebron. He's not going to have a game where he gets 3 targets and 3 touchdowns again.
No.
That's not going to happen.
Definitely not.
Ebron is, I think, overrated. I do agree with you.
Very overrated. I think people got, like I said, the game where I think that was the game that kind of switched the narrative because I think everyone was on the boat of Jack Doyle is better. Right, Jack Doyle's a better tight end. He's a better pass catcher. He's a better route runner. He's a better tight end overall than Eric Ebron, and he's the starter. He gets more targets. Like this is what that whole ship is gonna right itself, and Eric Ebron is gonna stop producing better than Jack Doyle. Well, Jack Doyle A couldn't stay on the field, and Jack Doyle B, for some reason in that game had 10 targets and like 8 receptions and still had a really decent game, but Eric Ebron ended up just catching all of his touchdowns.
He got the touchdowns, yep.
So Ebron is just not as good as people think. He's a guy that's trending up. He's a guy that's getting drafted early, and he's a guy that you should pass on.
The comparison is, I think, it's Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
However, the difference is Tyler Lockett is not getting drafted in the 5th round. Tyler Lockett was the guy last year that would have.
Yeah, he went off.
Like, people look at the total fantasy points, and they're like, whoa, Tyler Lockett had a way underrated season. I actually like Tyler Lockett as a player, but fantasy-wise, he would get 3 catches a week and get a touchdown.
That's ridiculous.
Like, he's not going to do that 2 straight seasons.
Yeah, Ebron, I like the Colts offense as a whole because they throw it a crap ton. And you have Andrew Luck as your quarterback. That's pretty good. I don't like Eric Ebron. I want to like Jack Doyle because I'm a Jack Doyle truther. I love Jack Doyle.
I don't even like Jack Doyle.
Yeah. But anyway, let's move on to Jared Cook. And then we'll quickly go over some guys maybe that you should draft later. But Jared Cook, he had 159. You see the drop-off, though. The 214 at 3, and then 189, and now you're down at tight end 5.
Yeah.
You got 159 fantasy points.
That is a big difference.
It's like people are going to draft guys way too early. Now, Jared Cook in recent news has moved camps from the Oakland Raiders to the New Orleans Saints. He almost retired. He was a consistency rank of 7, averaged 10 points a game, busted half of his games. He's better at home than on the road. I don't know where he's going on the...
He's currently going in round...
I think it's 10, right?
The last pick in the 10th round.
Last pick in the 10th round. So Jared Cook, he's a good tight end. He's a good blocker. He's a good pass catcher. He's a good, generally a good route runner.
He's tight end number 9 right now.
So
off the boards.
He's not, how Drew Brees has utilized his tight ends. This is the way I look at it, is that I'm glad he's going in the 10th round, because if the Saints are on the road game 1, somebody's going to drop him, and I'm going to snatch him right up. I'm not drafting Jared Cook. But one of the interesting things, I love Jared Cook as a streaming option. Here's why. Drew Brees plays well at home. Drew Brees likes to throw it to tight ends, right?
Yeah.
Jared Cook's not that bad of a tight end. Finished number 5 in fantasy football.
Yep.
In half
last
PPR
season, yeah.
last season. Not that bad. His home road split was 14 at home and 6 on the road.
14 per game.
Yeah. So if you put Jared Cook, who is good at home, with Drew Brees, who's good at home, there's some magic that I see happening
there.
There's
a good chance that, like you said, he stinks week 1 on the road and teams will cut him.
Yep.
He might be a legitimate streaming option.
He might, yeah. That's the way I look at it, is you have to...
I think likely, though, he probably will stay on the team. Like, I don't think a team will cut him, but depends on the league you're in. Depends.
I just
what
don't like
team
that he's getting
him,
drafted in the 10th round at all. I was hoping that he'd be on the waiver wire. But I think that's generally where he should be going. If you're drafting Jared Cook expecting him to be a number 1 tight end, then you probably are going to be very disappointed.
Yeah.
He's not going to finish in the top 5 again, but I think you'll have a couple of games at home where you'll look at it and go, "Wow, this guy's pretty good." He's only got 1 season left in the tank, though. I think.
Yeah, this is
probably it for Jared Cook. So generally speaking, I'm not going to be drafting Jared Cook, but some of these guys here at the bottom to close out the show, we can't talk about them in detail, but there's 3 guys that I want to talk about in particular: Austin Hooper, Trey Burton, and David Njoku.
Okay.
All of them finished. Austin Hooper at number 6, Trey Burton at number 7, and David Njoku at number 9. All of them finished in the top 10. Which one of these guys in particular do you see taking the leap from being in the back end of the top 10 to the top end top 10, kicking a guy like Eric Ebron and Jared Cook out, because those guys aren't going to finish in the top?
I was actually going to say a different name. I was thinking Vance McDonald, but out of those 3 guys,
Old McDonald, no.
Out of those 3 guys, I really want to say Njoku, because I personally really like Njoku.
Yeah,
I just think there's just a little bit too many weapons on that team, so I'm going to say Trey Burton. I think Trubisky is improving every year.
Yeah.
I think the offense overall, I think, is improving every year. I think they're going to throw the ball more, too, with Jordan Howard gone. I know they added Mike Davis, but I think that the kind of offense they're leaning towards and what they showed last year fits more with Trey Burton and what they want to do. I remember going into last year, there was a lot of hype around him. He still produced 7th-ranked tight end, was a little underwhelming, but I think this year he has, I don't think he will necessarily, but he has the potential to finish in the top 5 of tight ends.
So for me,
especially he's going after Jared Cook. He's going in the 11th round right now.
Yeah.
I think that's good value.
Who, Trey Burton?
Yep.
Yeah, I like Trey Burton, and I like Trey Burton, and I like Austin Hooper as sleepers next year, guys that you can draft after the 10th round, like I said in our draft.
Yeah, wow. Austin Hooper, that's a good one, because right now he was a 6th-ranked tight end. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is just so fascinating to me. He's going in the final round of drafts.
Yep. Not even.
Or undrafted.
If you look at undrafted. In a 10-team league, he's going undrafted. In a 12-team league, he's in the last round.
Wow.
This is what's interesting to me about Austin Hooper. This is the guy I'm taking. I like Trey Burton, but we saw him as, and we saw Austin Hooper as the number one guy, but we saw Trey Burton as the number one guy, and I don't know if they're going to change anything statistically. I mean, change anything, production-wise or
no, I think their offense as a whole.
What am I trying to say? Target share.
Yeah.
That's the one I'm looking for. I don't think they're going to change his target share next year. So I don't see Trey Burton seeing a massive increase. Austin Hooper has done this little 380, 620 thing, whatever. He's gone from every single year in the league, he has increasingly gotten better. His first year, I think he was the starting tight end for Atlanta his first year in the league, I believe. I can't remember. But he had like 60 to 70 fantasy points. Didn't finish that high. He wasn't that great. I had him on my team like week 1, and he went off. And I was like, yeah. That was like in 2017.
And then he blew.
And then he sucked. And then the following season, now he has 127. So if he's following the trend of getting better and better each year, I think Austin Hooper could make that jump from 127 fantasy points this year to being in that Eric Ebron, Jared Cook conversation where you finish 190, which 2 years ago, last year and 2 years ago, which was a tight end one finish. So, and I think you could see Austin Hooper in the 15th round, 14th, 15th, 16th round be the George Kittle of this year.
I think that's fair. My only concern with Austin Hooper is I do like that he's young, like you said, and he is improving. He's only 24 years old.
Yeah.
Like, that is a big plus. My only concern, though, is just, like, the weapons on the Falcons, on that team.
Yeah,
is he going to get his share?
Right.
When Calvin Ridley's going to, I think, get an increase. Julio Jones is still there. Sanu is still there. Like, how...
It's concerning. It's very concerning.
However, if you think this is, like, the Falcons' year, and you're all about the Falcons, and
buying in, let's go.
That would be my concern with Hooper, is just like,
yeah,
how many targets is he gonna get in that offense?
My problem with David Njoku is that I do believe that he's probably going to be good, and out of those three guys, he most likely will finish in the top 4 or 5. My problem with David Njoku, he might even finish as the number 1.
I love
if that
Njoku.
offense. My problem with Njoku is that he's getting drafted far too early for me to take the risk on him. He right now is going in I believe it's the
7th right now.
Yeah, 6th or 7th round.
Yeah, 6th. Yeah.
And so when you talk about drafting a tight end, for me, that's too early to take a risk on Njoku when I'm looking at guys like Julian Edelman. Mm-hmm. Not that I am super looking forward to drafting Julian Edelman, but I love Cooper Kupp in the 6th and 7th round. I'm not going to waste my pick on David Njoku when I have some good players that are going to give me much better value.
Mark Ingram, I think, right now is going in the 6th round. Like,
right. And I was hoping that Njoku would fall to like the 10th and be a 10th to 15th.
My problem with Njoku, though, is I get what you're saying.
People follow trends too much.
Yeah. I think like the hype around the Browns' whole team, though, is a little bit getting out of hand. Just a little bit.
Every single Browns player is like literally jumped to the top.
I mean, I'm on the bandwagon too. But
he's like, I'm here.
Even if the Browns' offense is everything that everybody expects next year.
Yeah.
That means Jarvis Landry's going off. That means Odell's going off. That means Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt's going off. So how good is Njoku going to really be?
Yeah,
and I
what's
like
his target share?
Like, especially as a player. But I just, it's kind of the same problem with Austin Cooper. And that's kind of why I said Trey Burton. Cause
definitely.
There's not really, like, Allen Robinson. Like, there's not really, like, the guy on the Bears or a few guys that we will
do a bunch of sleeper shows. We'll go over more in detail some of these guys. One of the guys I really like is O.J. Howard. He's one of those guys getting drafted in that area.
Yeah.
That's one of those picks that's extremely dangerous because you're only gonna hit on a certain amount of tight ends.
Yeah.
But as far as there's so many tight ends that got. I believe it was 122 tight ends in total this year that had some form of fantasy points. And so when you talk about the tight end position and each team only carrying like 3, that's a lot of tight ends.
That is, yeah.
That's a lot of tight ends. And like for me, you're only getting production from some of them, but like on any given week, there was one guy that I saw on this list, and we'll close the show with this. There's one guy I saw on this list. It was like a random week. He finished the number 1 tight end in fantasy. and I can't remember what his name is. Give me a second to pull him up.
That's crazy that you can't even remember what his name was. That kind of proves your point.
McFly something. It might have been week 17. I don't know. Blake Jarwin finished number 1 in week 17, which is crazy. There was a guy finished 10 fantasy points week 16. His name is Michael Pruitt. He plays for the Tennessee Titans. And then you have Ed Dixon from Seattle.
Oh yeah, the boy.
But there's a bunch of guys. Every single week you get a completely different tight end finishing
that's kind of
as the number 1 or number 10, and like the Cleveland Browns, right? Week 13, right? Demetrius Harris. Levine Tolo right underneath him. He's a free agent. I don't even know what team he was on at the time. But it's like you got all these tight ends that just completely come out of nowhere for 1 week and then leave. The tight end position is such a scripted position. You talk about game scripting. You talk about getting players the ball in specific situations. You talk about the main guy on the team like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Zach Ertz, those guys being the number 1 player on the team, and they're pulling guys away, so then it opens up opportunities for the second tight end. This happens way too often. And I think the tight end position is such a questionable. It's almost like I said this before, like I said this at the beginning of the show, making a tight end / wide receiver position, because it is such an unpredictable position. It makes fantasy football harder, and it makes you have to think a lot harder about these decisions, because honest to God, if you have a tight end that works on your team and you already have good running backs and wide receivers, it is like an unfair cheat code advantage for your fantasy team. Because if you already have freaking Todd Gurley, or for you and your team example, if you have Christian freaking McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley on your team, and you have Michael Thomas and Julio Jones on your team, and then you add Travis Kelce to that group, like it is literally, it's like putting a cheat code into Pro Skater 4.
Yeah, it is.
I bet 90% of the people who listen to this podcast don't even know what that video game is, or it's
an all-time great.
It's an all-time great. Go look it up. But anyway, yeah, to me, it's like when you look at the tight end position, it is so having a good tight end can really put your team over the top, but it's not necessary.
It's not.
It's not.
Well, that's the thing. People can joke with you and be like, well, yeah, your team might be good, but you don't have a tight end. Okay, well, if I have 2 running backs that give me 25 points a game,
yeah,
which would have to be really good, but let's just play along, and 2 wide receivers that get me 15 to 20 points a game,
yeah,
I don't need a tight end that gets me 12.
That.
I don't. I'm sorry.
This is something that I'm trying. We gotta conclude the show, but this is something that I'm really trying to figure out this offseason, is how to stream tight ends a lot more effectively, because last year it was a struggle. I literally had no idea what to do. I got to the point where I just stuck with David Njoku and Jack Doyle for certain weeks, and I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. That's why I tried my darndest to get Travis Kelce, and I succeeded. And then I traded him away for Gronk, and that was the end of that. So, anyway, you have to sit down and really figure out, if you're going to stream tight ends, you got to figure out how the heck you're going to stream tight ends. It is one of the hardest positions to stream because it's so unpredictable.
Yeah.
Like for quarterbacks, you can look at
kind of go by matchup.
Yeah, matchup and home road and all that stuff.
You know they're going to throw the ball. You don't know if a tight end's going to catch it.
Right. And the same thing for kickers and defenses. You can go based on matchup. For tight ends, you just can't.
Yeah.
It's like either guy's going to be good or he's going to be bad on that particular week. You got to figure out what the game script might be for that guy. Are they going to target him? Are the linebackers weak on the other team? And then you start going into way too much detail about a tight end that probably won't do anything for your team anyway.
Max gets you 5 fantasy points.
Yeah, for 5 fantasy points, 7 fantasy points. It's just not even worth it. So that concludes the series, All That Glitters. Bookmark this episode and save it for draft season in a few months. It's going to give you an advantage, an edge in 2019 to kind of remind you of the top guys that finished and whether you should actually be drafting them or not. Make sure you listen next week as we talk about the best rookie quarterbacks / tight ends from 2018 as we move forward into preparation for the NFL draft,
Dun, 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 dun.
where the first week of May we will recap the NFL Draft-a-Palooza and
Oh boy,
and tell you what guys you should be targeting and what guys you should not be targeting.
I'm drafting Kyler Murray in round 4.
Yeah, most of these guys you probably should stay away from in your redraft leagues. But for
Probably.
Dynasty, that'll be a big Dynasty show. We are a redraft show, but hey,
Yeah.
got to throw a little Dynasty in there when you're talking about rookies. And it's good to keep an eye on rookies as a foresight, because knowing a guy might go off in 2 years will prepare you for 2020 fantasy seasons.
Right, yeah.
Which is crazy. But we will talk about rookies rookie quarterbacks and tight ends from 2018 and whether you should move forward in drafting them in 2019 or just avoid them and see it as a flash in the pan. I don't think there was any rookies besides Trey Burton for tight ends.
Trey Burton wasn't a rookie.
Yeah, he was.
He played for the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl.
That's not true.
Yep.
That's not true.
Yeah, it is.
Don't even say that.
Did you? Yeah, he was the.
You're messing
he was
me
the
up
guy. He
because
was
I
the
thought
guy that
was a rookie. I
No,
thought
he
was
came from the Eagles. He was the guy that caught the touchdown off the Nick Foles play in the Super Bowl against. You know why you think he's a rookie? Is because he
That's
played
enough of this.
in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and when we lost, so you kind of took it out of your memory.
I did take
get
it out of my mind. Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you follow us and like us and all that good stuff. Subscribe, leave a review. See you next week, Fantasy Champs.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.